won't talk too long, but I do have a few things I'd like to say. First of all, obviously, thank you so much to Buffy and her legion of helpers. There's too many to name. Just incredible for putting all this together. The flowers are amazing. If you haven't seen all the arrangements, and her team that did that. The light. There you go.
Good team.
Thanks to the lifeguards, the rest of the Eagle Harbor staff for putting up with us. Thanks to the little chefs, if you haven't had the desserts, Kendall Sage, Brandon Gilman, and Heather McDonald, who made the amazing desserts. Thank you so much. A sincere thanks to each of you. So, for those of you who don't know, my grandfather on my father's side, we call him Daddy Mac, he was a pilot. He left his home in New Zealand at age 13, which is Stuart's age, and he sailed to the UK to be educated. Shortly after he arrived, World War I broke out, and Daddy Mac, who was a boxer, he was a crack shot with a pistol, basically a badass, lied about his age and joined the Royal Air Force to become a flight officer, a pilot. He flew Sopwith Camels, which is a single-engine a single-engine, I haven't even had any beer yet, single-engine canvas biplane with twin 7.7 millimeter Vickers machine guns that fired directly through the propeller to shoot down German aircraft and strafe German troop movements. Unlike the overwhelming majority of the pilots in his squadron, Daddy Mac lived. He made good choices. He did it right. I have an actual Sopwith Camel propeller in my living room today, and I think of Daddy Mac often. I think of the stories that he told, but more importantly, I think of the story he lived. He lived a really good story. It's funny, really. I've always been drawn to good stories, interesting stories, the stories that are unfiltered, that take us out of the usual and predictable and take us into the freedom of the unknown. Those are the interesting stories. They're the stories that I've been drawn to. They're the kind of stories that Daddy Mac lived. About the same time Daddy Mac was flying, the U.S. Navy was actively recruiting young men for military service. I brought tonight a recruiting poster they used back then. I invite you to come take a look at it later this evening. It was created in 1915, and it says this: wings, thrills, for interesting service, join the Navy. 100 years have passed since then. 100 years. Think about that. A whole lot has changed, but one thing's for sure, that poster is as accurate today as it was back then. Wings, thrills, for interesting service, join the Navy. Obviously, on a night like tonight, occasions such as this, one gets reflective. Interesting is an appropriate word, but so is exhilarating, heartbreaking, terrifying, dangerous. To quote one of my favorite movies, a film called Blade Runner, I've seen things you people wouldn't believe. And I don't say that with any ego, but simply as a matter of fact, you actually wouldn't believe some of the things that I've seen. All around the world, 6 continents, countless cultures, thousands of flight hours, thousands of people, but all these myriad adventures, these sights seen, emotions lived through, all these moments will be one day lost in time, also from the movie, like tears in rain. What preserves, though, what lasts, what lives on, is the stories. The stories of those times possess lots of aspects: characters, setting, scenes, conflicts. For us, the stories illustrate successes, failures, character transformation, heartache, joy. The stories give us lessons, and I'd like to share a few of those lessons with you tonight. One lesson I've learned is the price of living a military story. I've lived it. Buffy's lived it. My boys have lived it. The sacrifice, the deployments, the nights alone, the fear, the uncertainty, the finality of death. In 20 years, I've learned what that cost is. I can name it. The name is Paul Kocher, Tommy Lee, Kent Kuntz, Kelly Mackey, Danny Garber, Mike Hilligus, Scott Bratcher, Kylan Jones Huffman, Eric Christensen. For those men, and for others you may know and are thinking of right now, I'll quote the inscription etched in granite in the Sacred Hall honoring Scottish war dead at the Castle of Edinburgh. The souls of the righteous are in the hand of God. There shall no evil happen to them. They are in peace. A military story costs birthdays, anniversaries, Christmas mornings. Military story costs happiness sometimes, costs miscommunications that can lead to epic marital arguments. Sadly, at a rate far greater than the general public, a military story can cost marriages. Did you know there's only 1% of Americans who choose to live a military story? 1% who choose to defend the freedom of the other 99%. Do you know why they do it? You know why Buffy and I did it? I'll tell you, we do it because we've learned that freedom is worth it, that liberty is worth it, that choosing to have the opportunity to live your own story is worth it. In Scotland a few weeks ago, I learned about something called the Declaration of Arbroath. It was written in April of 1320 by Scots who wanted to declare why they chose to fight in response to repeated attempts by neighboring England. The brave Scots, my ancestors, wrote this: "For we fight not for glory, nor riches, nor honors, but for freedom alone, which no good man gives up except with his life." That was 1320. It's 2014. Nothing's changed. That's why we do it. My prayer is that the leaders we elect both locally and nationally can remember that. I think a lot of them have forgotten it, but maybe you can help me remind them of it together. Here's something else I've learned. I've been able to narrow down many of my lessons to 4 simple words: discipline, integrity, attitude, humor. You can use your favorite app to look those up. And I think that you'll agree that if you use practiced and intentional discipline, while always acting with integrity, projecting and believing in a positive attitude, while maintaining the ability to laugh at yourself and others, you'll do great things. You'll live better stories. Here's something else I've learned. Throughout the years and the miles and the adventures, I've also learned that all men really are created equal. From Guatemala to Sydney, Dubai to Quito, Hong Kong to Glasgow to Fleming Island, people are the same. We hope, we dream, we weep, we love. We have an amazing God who created each one of us in his own image. He gave us reason, passion, imagination, dreams, the ability to love. He made us like him. He made us so that we might live out spectacular stories with our own lives. But more importantly than that, he invites us to be part of his incredible story. One of my favorite authors, Don Miller, says this: a good storyteller doesn't just tell a better story, he invites other people into the story with him, giving them a better story too. I believe that's what God wants us to do. He wants us to create beautiful stories, and whatever it is that isn't God wants us to create meaningless stories, teaching people that life isn't worth living. We each may speak differently, look differently, think differently, act differently. We're each unique creations in God's image. That's why it's so important to do what Jesus asked us to do, to love our neighbors as ourselves. We're called to do that because each of our neighbors, each of our fellow men and women are in the image of God. I've learned that it actually matters to love them. Like you love yourself, hopefully like you love your God, with all your heart and soul and mind and strength. I try to do that. I'm not always very successful, but I keep trying because I've learned that it actually matters. Something else I've learned is this: from the lazy forests and rivers of the Upper Peninsula of Michigan to the sheer granite faces, rock faces of Australia, and everywhere in between, I've learned that nature matters. This creation matters. You know, every good story has a setting, the place where the story takes place. Just take a minute and consider the setting of our story. This creation we live in is magical, surreal, resplendent with beauty. We're made to be part of it, out in it, taking it all in. I've learned that I need to do that. I've learned that we need to do that. This is from a little book that I wrote about the same subject. Get outside, and you just might find the time to spend the night beneath the stars, beside a stream. Sleep peacefully. You just may dream. You may gain a consuming awe from which you'll find you can't withdraw. Go into nature, sleep outside, enjoy big vistas, far and wide. Stomp in mud and play in snow. Enjoy a summer full moon's glow, like tonight. Climb mountains, hills, and winding trails. Make your own stories, tell your tales. Experience the grandeur of this planet that we all so love. We each can celebrate creation on every continent and nation. I'm so grateful that my parents chose to make space for God's creation in our family's life, planting in me a seed that would grow throughout my years into a passion filled with respect and awe. And here's something else I've learned along Buffy and my path from, you can see it right here, Annapolis to Richmond to Annapolis to Pensacola, to San Diego, back to Annapolis, to Jacksonville, Norfolk, Jacksonville, every stop along the way. I've learned this, said so well in another favorite movie of mine called Moulin Rouge. The greatest thing you'll ever learn is just to love and be loved in return. Friendship is a form of love, not romantic, hugsy, kissy love, but it's a form of love, and that's where each of you come in. Each of you is here because of our friendship. Each one of you is here because of our stories have intersected. You're all part of my story, but each of you have invited me to be part of your story also, making my story better along the way. We've flown together, taught together, rode bikes together, climbed mountains together, written books together, worshiped together, learned about Jesus together. We've laughed with each other, supported each other. We've cried with each other. We've carried each other. Sometimes we may have even yelled at each other. You've listened when no one else would. You've taught me things about leadership and followership and marriage and communication and how to survive and how to support and how to encourage, how to talk and how to listen. Each one of you here tonight, there's a part of each one of you in me. There's also a small part of me in each of you. That's how it works. When you love someone and are a friend to someone, you make yourself vulnerable by giving something of yourself away. And then I do that for you. And then we move forward, growing in trust and fellowship. Each one of you here has done that for me and for Buffy and for our boys. And over these 20 years, I've learned that that really matters. I'm so grateful for your willingness to do that, and I'm so grateful for each one of you. Thank you sincerely. I pray that our friendships will grow more and more in the months and years ahead. But love exists in more things than friendship, and in half of my military years, I've learned that the hardest thing I'll ever do is be a parent to 2 young boys. Mom and Dad, I will publicly apologize for being such a pain in your butts growing up. Sorry about that. That was a pretty loud laugh. But because you loved me unconditionally, I had a second chance. And then a third, and then a fourth, and you get the idea. And now I'm seeing it all myself in living color with these 2 boys. You know, I tell Stuart and Cameron all the time that God could have given them to any mom and dad in the world. And I'm so lucky that God chose me to be their dad. I'm so lucky that God donated these two spectacular characters to be such integral parts of Buffy and my story. I'm really, really lucky. But it's hard work, trying to live an honorable life that they may want to emulate. I make mistakes. I'm grateful that you guys love me in spite of those mistakes. You two guys have never done anything other than to make me proud. In you two, I see so much wonder and love and passion and joy. I'm so excited to see what you do with all those things, and I pray, as I've said to you many, many times, that you may use your many powers for good and not evil. And don't forget to feed the dog. And just one more thing. I'm almost done. Thanks for bearing with you. Many of you here know that one of my many, many, many character flaws is an overactive imagination. Oftentimes, good stories need a bunch of imagination. Sometimes it can be a gift, but other times it can get me in a lot of trouble. But the final lesson that I've learned is this: superheroes really do exist. They do. This spring, when I was looking for a job, I bored some of you with references to recent superhero movies to help me describe what I want to do with the rest of my life. But the superheroes in all those movies are make-believe. Thor and Batman, Spider-Man, Captain America, Mr. Incredible. I'm not talking about those guys. I'm talking about the superheroes who really do exist in this world. And I'm married to one. None of this... Come on up, princess.
It's a little close, isn't it? Hi, Gail. I'm taping it for Gail.
None of this would be possible without Buffy's support. This story would have ended a long time ago if not for her and her dedication, her compassion, her forgiveness, her passion, and her love. This career would not have been. I would not have been who I am. These two spectacular boys, none of it. The best definition of a story I've ever heard is this: a story is a character who wants something and overcomes conflict to get it. A story is a character who wants something and overcomes conflict to get it. Buffy is a character. You all know that. She wanted something, us, this, each of you, and she overcame tremendous conflict to get it. With God's help, you've made us a great story. I mentioned earlier that I've seen things you people wouldn't believe. Well, so has Buffy. Different things, but equally unbelievable things. Things I couldn't possibly imagine, even with my overactive imagination. She lived them. She lived through them, putting herself second, or third, or last, so that I could do something that I either wanted to do, or needed to do, or probably should do, or was ordered to do. The list is too long to mention. Saying thank you doesn't come close to what I feel. You're a superhero. And hear me now. Our military story is over.
Praise God.
This is not a party to celebrate my retirement. This is a party to celebrate Buffy and my retirement. We're both done. Let's take our lessons and our family and move on. But before we do, I want everyone to be able to recognize your superhero status. So I got you something. Open it up. We'll wait.
Is it going to be like the awards that you made? Is it going to be like that? Dad made the awards you're wearing. Are those current? Did you use the packing tape? Yes, you did.
I want to make sure if you want to get into it.
I think I saw it on the desk when I was getting Sharpies out.
Oh, Hey, nice pajamas.
My mom did not make this. Really? Mom, you didn't know about this?
Good job. Good job, Ross.
All right, so like Daddy Mac, I'm one of the lucky ones. I've done my time.
Super Buffy.
I have my life. I have my superhero wife. I've lived a pretty good military story, but it's just a chapter in Buffy and my larger story, which are just sentences in God's cosmic story. Maybe I made a difference. Maybe the world's a little better than it was when I found it. I hope so anyway, but as the poster says, wings, thrills, for interesting service, join the Navy. It's certainly been interesting and thrilling, and a bunch of other things also. To close, I'll quote Don Miller one more time. You know, in the Bible, in the book of Ecclesiastes, the only practical advice given about living a meaningful life is this: find a job you like, enjoy your marriage, and obey God. It's almost like God is saying, write a good story, take somebody with you, and let me help. Buffy and I are going to go do just that with God's help. Thank you to each of you. Thank you for coming. There's going to be another diving contest, and I look forward to visiting with you all night long. We're here until 10 o'clock. Thanks very much. More games are coming. Go swim, have fun.